Years ahead of the dominant media. FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Evening, folks. This is Barry Chamish. A guest I've known him for a long time, and we have all kinds of things to talk about. That's Kevin Lee. And by the way, I was phoning Kevin Barrett, believe it or not, to thank him for a book that's not exactly me, but I was included in it. It was a case of liberalism, and the heck with it. He's going to be liberal, I'm going to be liberal. And instead of Kevin Barrett, I phoned Kevin Lee, which I'm really glad about. All right, Kevin, how are you?
Yeah, Barry, I was glad that your accidental call got us time to catch up on things and chat for a little while.
I don't know if you read what I wrote yesterday.
I didn't get a chance to read it carefully, no, but I would
look at it seriously afterwards. It's many years and many thoughts put together. Look, there's no doubting it without a doubt. Israel's founders were pro-Nazi. They were working with Nazis. I've been writing about this for a long time, but it all came together. Who knows where inspiration, maybe it comes from desperation, but I put it together, and it's very, very hard to live with. That Israel was founded by pro-Nazi Zionists, labor Zionists. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and I read your earlier writings on that and the documentation that you provide and the quotes that were even in that article you said yesterday are pretty convincing. That there was the history of the formation of the Israeli state, the modern Israeli state, is different than what we believe, but I still think that it's what man proposed, which was from your writings, to bring the Jews there to kind of lose their Jewish identity and
it was to wipe out the Jews. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but that's not what they were proposing.
Okay, say it again for the audience.
They were Nazis. They were wiping them out by the millions. All right. You read the article.
But the ones they let to come to Israel, the labor, were supposed to just kind of. What was the plan for them? The plan for them was to just kind of go along with the socialist mode and kind of lose their Jewish identity.
Oh, stop that. Read my article before you say things like that. That's not what's going on. Not at all. All right, let's go to stuff we know in common, and then we'll hit this maybe at the end. This socialism is not at all what was going on. Not at all. All right. Okay. And by the way, the documentation this time around, it came together, and a lot of people who didn't understand me, boy, was I dealing with emails yesterday from all over the place where people did understand me. You read it first, then we'll talk again on this one.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about, look, we met a long, long time ago. First, we wrote about a conflict that I think is over. That's Serbia, Kosovo. Now, remind me, what brought us together?
Well, I was very interested in Jewish history, Israel history, and somebody sent me an email of yours that was, they were on your emailing list during the Serbian-Kosovo conflict where America went and bombed Serbia into submission, and you were writing that this was basically the same arguments used for Serbia and Kosovo could be used for Israel and the so-called West Bank, etc., which is the same thing I've been telling my congregation, that this is
right?
UN, and you were right. I thought you were right, so I wrote you, and I said, hey, Barry, I just want to know that, I want you to know that I appreciate your insight, and I share it. And
what happened in Gaza this summer?
Pardon?
Gaza. It's a little place to the southwest of what's now known as Israel.
Right. You mean this last summer with the last war to be the... it's... Yeah, everything.
You don't see that as kind of a duplicate of Serbia, Kosovo?
Yeah, everything. I mean, ultimately, the United Nations is even now encroaching on the idea of, and as soon as the United States is no longer there to do a veto, that they could say, hey, we want you to do a peace process. If you don't, we don't care what your security requirements are. We're going to bring the full weight and force of the United Nations military complex.
What force is that?
To bear.
Now, realistically, what force are we talking about?
Well, I mean, the United Nations could do everything that they did in Serbia to bring into submission. They'd be up against a tougher foe, but that's what they would want to do. I mean, they're threatening to do that, Barry. You understand they're threatening to do that. I mean, that's what all these UN resolutions... I mean,
what is the United Nations? They've been there for a long time, and their effect has been minimal, to say the least. What's left? What have they got in their arsenal?
Well, they got in the arsenal of those people that are compliant to their desires, want to, just like when America's arsenal was brought to bear against the highly outnumbered Serbians when we send in our state-of-the-art technology and wipe them out. So, in other words, all it takes is for them to have military capabilities that they think they could take out Israel, which is, there is none, at my view, is that's not going to happen. I just want to let your listeners know it's not going to happen because Israel has an unseen player that they're not considering, but the God of Israel.
Of course. How did I miss that?
Now, you and I disagree about that. You think they're actually going to be defeated,
but I disagree.
I don't.
Not banking on it. You're throwing in your lot. You might end up being very disappointed. What is opposed is within the Jewish people itself. That's the article I wrote yesterday. And after the show is over, take a look at it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I tried to skim it yesterday, and I realized I can't skim it. I gotta read this carefully, and so
I didn't just make claims. Basically, it was 90% proof, and real strong stuff too. But you'll see later on. It's not me. It's reality put together in a way that becomes indisputable, and it's god-awful when you look at why Israel was found. The worst thing that ever happened to the Jews was Israel. Hands down, the worst thing that ever happened to them as a people.
Yeah, I differ on that, but that's okay. Well, that's what I like
Wait
about
till
it.
you read the article. We'd have a lot more people alive. All right. I'm not going to... It's not for me to say right now, but we'd have many, many more million people who didn't suffer the way they died if there was no Israel. But you read and you figure it out. More and more it becomes obvious as a people we would have been much better shape if there was never even a concept of Israel. But neither here nor there. You didn't read it, so I'm not going to do a dialogue. All right, now, let's go back to things that, well, we shared something in common. You know, I missed this, and you brought it up for me, and I didn't know what to do with it. You have just seen a PBS special on assassinations, and it ends with Shimon Peres stating that Rabin was shot through his front chest pocket, which, according to the doctors, isn't what happened. According to the film, isn't what happened. But according to Peres, that's how he died. What? First of all, why did you send me that? By the way, I'm glad you did. It shows that Peres can't keep his crimes straight. But neither here nor there, what was on your mind?
Well, after you and I had tied up with after your email about Serbia and Kosovo, then I started getting on your mailing list and reading what you were writing about Yitzhak Rabin, and I thought your documentation there was irrefutable, and that Yigal Amir was a patsy, and that Rabin was assassinated by others. And then when I saw your information in your emails, where the Yigal Amir story was that he shot him from the back as Rabin was walking to his car. And
you
Rabin
do have my DVD. I mean, you have seen it, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen all that. I've read your book. I've read your book and everything else. But at that time, I was thinking, oh, okay. And then I was very interested in the 50 Years War PBS special that was broadcast. It was very popular, and I watched the whole thing. And at the very end, as you said, Perez is remembering, he's eulogizing his being up in the podium with Rabin, and Rabin couldn't sing very well, but he was reading the song, the words of the song, and then he folded it up, put it into his pocket, and the bullet of the assassin went through the song and into his heart. And,
actually, if anything happened, was the opposite. I show the song sheet. I don't think the bullet came out, but it may have come through. Neither here nor there. It did not come from the front. That's for darn sure, as Perez claimed.
Right. Well, but see but the point was, and as soon as he said that, I go, Barry Chamish should hear this, because this is Perez himself implying to all the millions of people watching the PBS special that he was shot from the front. I mean, that's what he was saying. And so I sent it to you, and you put that into your book, I think.
They would see that Rabin was revived in the hospital. They panicked. Right. Perez was at Ichilov Hospital, and they shooed the doctors out, and they shot him through the front. It's a very messy assassination. But what you said sort of fit in to a cover-up.
Yeah. So I saw that he was off party line for the cover-up, and so I sent it to you, and then you saw the same thing, and so that was another time we got connected. And then we got connected again when I visited Israel and saw you in Modi'in.
You saw me in Modi'in, one of the few people who took a special trip all the way from America to visit me in Modi'in. How much of that is...
And actually, I went from Sudan to England to Israel, and to see you in Modi'in, and another friend of mine went to South Sudan with me. We wanted to come and visit you, as well as see a couple of sites while we were there.
Did I have any lasting effect on him?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed our visit together, and we talked some more about the Rabin assassination and about my exile on the submarine, etc.
You know, there have been many assassinations since. It's funny, you mentioned Bill Owens. He was your XO. I'm not even sure what an XO is. It sounds dirty.
It's executive officer.
Say it again?
The XO is short in Navy slang for the executive officer of your command.
Okay. I stared at that. My XO could be anything as far as I knew. Now, you know about Wayne Owens. You know about this, right?
Well, yeah, Bill Owens. I know. You got me more educated after that trip where I saw you in Modi'in. But
that he didn't return from? Oh, my goodness. It's a scary, scary place. It really is if you have influence. Now, your XO was clearly not Wayne Owens. He was a Utah, what was he, senator? Whatever. He took a trip to Israel, and he never came back. I assume Bill Owens was not related.
Well, Bill Owens he wasn't a senator. He was... He's a mover shaker. He was the assistant chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during Gulf War I. He was the commander of the Mediterranean Fleet. he went from the commander of the Mediterranean Fleet to the assistant chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and before all that, he was the executive officer, second in command on the submarine that I was stationed on out of Hawaii back in the 70s. And the reason why you and I talked about him is because I shared with you the story that when I was an enlisted man on a submarine, he wanted me to become an officer, which was called the Navy's NESEP program, which involved applying for the NESEP program, where you go from an enlisted man to college for 4 years, get an engineering degree, and come back as an officer, which he wanted me to do. It involves an interview with the officers on your ship, which he was coming to my Bible studies, which I was leading on this ship when we were at sea, and he knew what I felt about things and about Israel, and he asked me in the interview if I did get into the NESEP program and become an officer and was a captain of a nuclear-powered submarine someday in the future, and I was ordered to shoot a modified nuclear weapon at Israel, would I do it?
And that was a real possibility?
And what he said was, you become an officer, the United States does what it should do.
You have to do whatever you're ordered to.
He wanted to know how I felt. He knew how I felt about Israel. He was wondering if I would take the order even to basically execute my friend.
Well, would you disobey or obey?
What I told him is that I would stand by to get sunk. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, God has brought the Jews back in the land of Israel. I know you disagree with this, but this is what I told him. And nothing's going to change that. So if I'm that somebody would sink us, the nuclear weapon would blow up in the tube or whatever. And he goes, no, you're ordered to do it. You give the order, it happens. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I probably would, but it's not going to happen. And then, so anyway, I stayed an enlisted man in the Navy until I got out years later. And he and I got back together for breakfast here about 12 years ago, and just talked about those days. And so they really told me that he was a Jesuit and that he's a mover shaker within the New World Order kind of guys. You told me he was a Jesuit.
You're going too fast.
Okay.
Who was a Jesuit? I missed that.
You told me afterwards, after I saw you in Modine, and you put out an email after our discussion together there in Modine, and I wrote you and you said that you had done some more research on Admiral Bill Owens and determined that he had come out of Jesuit school. Before he came to my submarine, he had gotten out of the nuclear Navy long enough to go get his master's degree at Oxford University, political science, got back into the nuclear Navy on my submarine, and so he's a groomed globalist.
So in this interview, this was many years after your service ended, well, first he revealed that he was claustrophobic and lived in terror, and then he was a globalist? I mean, and then
who said he was claustrophobic? I didn't say that.
I'm joking.
Oh, okay.
Listen, just live with my humor. It helps. It loosens things up. He was not a commander of a sub if he was claustrophobic, I assume.
Right.
But you're saying he was a globalist, which means what?
Well, he is, and when we met for breakfast several years ago, he knew Yitzhak Rabin. We talked about the assassination in my breakfast discussion with him. And he is one of the elites, like Kissinger and these other guys, that are behind the scenes and are doing things to create, in their minds, a global utopia. And, Israel, the state of Israel is kind of a problem. It's like a bug in the soup in the plans of a global utopia.
How? I say they're playing along, unless you buy the propaganda that the whole Middle East is an uproar everywhere but Israel. I mean, that's the story we're given. Are you buying that?
Well, I'm just saying it is a reality. I mean, it's a reality that everything that the United Nations does has to do with maligning Israel. Everybody in the Middle East, it's all Israel. It's Israel. It's Israel. That's facts. That's what they say. That's what they do. And if they were ever to accomplish it... Nope, never have. Never even bought a lottery ticket.
Oh, darn. I would give Israel maybe 10 years. That's it. No, that's it.
Well, Kissinger wrote about 2 years ago that the world will be free of Israel in 10 years. There will be no Israel in 10 years. Your listeners can Google our website, can do a search on our website, Kissinger.
Stop. You have to give the address of the website. All right, this is as good a time as any. If anyone wants to meet and talk with Kevin Lee, how do they do it?
Oh, well, the easiest way to just find out, CalvaryPO.org. That's our website.
That was too fast. I didn't get
Calvary. CalvaryPO for Port Orchard, Calvary Church of Port Orchard. CalvaryPO.org. Or you can just Google Kevin Lee, KevinLea, and you'll just Google that.
At gmail.com.
Not at Gmail. Just Google Kevin Lee, LEA.
Oh, you have a site, a URL.
It's CalvaryPO.org.
All right, folks. If you missed that, we are archived for a week. LibertyArchives.com. You can get it back. Now, this is, I think, kind of interesting. For whatever reasons he's been following me, he has been for many years. He actually sat on my sofa. That's pretty good. Right?
That last part I missed what you said.
You actually sat on my sofa.
Yeah, I did. I sat in your house in Modine before you had to get out of Dodge. Yep. Which is an English euphemism. Yeah.
I didn't want to get out of Dodge. To this day, my body is in terrible shape from an accident I didn't believe was an accident. I got scared. I didn't think my time was in Dodge was going to be long. All right. But you know what? I'm going to use this time to plug me, and then we're going to go on to another subject. I don't know how you get over these things knowing what I've written, but folks, you get to me, you get all my books at lulu.com, www.lulu.com. You'll see a search box right in my last name, Chamish, Chamish. At liberty.com, that'll get you to my books. And here's hoping David has kept up the site. I just put in a new beauty yesterday, and that's www.barrychamish.com. There, my plugging is over for another hour. Now look, the next, without sliding over, all right, you would have defied orders, you wouldn't have shot a nuke at Israel. Luckily, I think that was highly rhetorical. But you know what? Next week, I'm having a lady to talk about the attempt by Lyndon Johnson to sink a ship called the Liberty. And she expounded on this. It's not impossible. You had leaders in America quite capable of this, but it seems like a rhetorical question by your XO.
Well, I would have completely thought it was rhetorical had he not added the statement, the United States does what it should do. And then years later when I found out... Huh?
What did that say to you?
Say that again?
Yeah, what did that say to you? What is happening?
Well, that says to me that he was saying his view, his personal view at that point in history, I don't know where he's at right now in his views, but at that point he thought what we should do is eliminate the state of Israel, and he just came out of Oxford University, which is the equivalent of Skull and Bones Yale University, as a Rhodes Scholar. He was a globalist.
3 minutes off. We'll get back to this. Folks, we've got a good guy, a personal a friend, and we'll be back in 3. See you then. Don't run away, Kevin.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation and our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
All right, folks, we got a very fine guest, and he knows me. I like when that happens. Occasionally it does. Kevin Lee has actually been to my home in Modine. We've met face to face. Now, look, Kevin, what you told me about Kissinger, you know his family was wiped out, and you know when you read my article, he's aware of who was... Look, the Nazis were obviously incredibly criminal. There's no expunging their crimes, but read my article, will you? Now, it's going to be a new challenge for you, but you had an old one. For some reason, you took interest. I don't know why I got involved. They asked me is why. The M&A children, the parents, 4,500 children wanted to know why their children went away one day and never came home. Let's go into that subject. I know that was a tough one for you. Let's talk it.
Okay. Well, why don't you talk first and explain to those who don't know what I know only because of you?
No.
What happened? What happened right after World War II?
I don't want to... It was in the early 50s, by the way, that they were kidnapped. But let's...
And they were taken to America. So Okay, so what I learned from you, and I'm having to go on memory on what you wrote, but basically with documented proof, and I think there's even been some TV exposure to this and documentaries that have been done, that some Jewish children that were not wiped out in the Holocaust were turned over to Americans by Shimon Peres.
They weren't anywhere near Germany. They weren't knocked off the Holocaust.
Right, but I mean, it wasn't just European Jews that were being wiped out during the Holocaust. I mean, but anyway, so these surviving Jewish children,
in 1952 to 1957, and they were from the southern tip of Saudi Arabia. They're not Holocaust victims. They're victims of Yemenite. They're victims of labor Zionism. We have to establish this, or we're going to get really lost.
Okay, so anyway, but some powerful people, and you allege that Shimon Peres was the head of these people who went and rounded up Yemenis. Nobody would care about them. No one would know. Round up Yemenis
He was head of the Atomic Energy Commission.
And shipped them off to America, right?
Yep.
And never seen again.
Yep.
And then what you allege, and what others allege, is that they were used for experimentation in America associated with the blossoming nuclear power industry.
You know, people may think because they didn't speak Hebrew and they got off the boat that they were primitives. In fact, the Yemenites are very sophisticated, and they managed to find the pictures of the kids in cages. They managed to actually get data. About 500 were actually adopted without being blasted with nuclear, without being murdered, all right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah, and then when I was reading that years ago, when you were writing to your email list about the information that you had, I was thinking it answered a question for me that I had since my nuclear Navy training days, and that was when I first went in the nuclear power program on my way to be on a submarine. They were training us about all kinds of things, nuclear physics, core design, everything else, and the damaging effects of radiation on the human body. And they gave us these limits. The legal limit in America is 3 rem per quarter or 5 rem per year. You can't, if you get more than that, it'll have biological effects.
What do you mean they gave you these women?
Say that again?
You said they gave you these women. I don't know what that means.
Limits. What that means is that
limits. All right,
limits.
It's the phone line.
Okay.
Limits. I got you.
Okay. So a radioactive worker in the nuclear power program or the civilian nuclear power program is not allowed to get over certain amounts of radiation that in America it's read in what's called a rem. Those are the units of measure, rem or millirem, for thousandths of a rem. And you can't get over this amount of radiation or you'll get noticeable biological damage. And so if you stay underneath it, they were saying, hey, you're safe. As long as you stay under this limit, you're okay. And then they gave us other limits, emergency limits. And one of the emergency limits is, to just put shock in us, is if you get 500 rem in a short period of time, half of the people exposed to it will die. 1,000 rem in a short period of time, everybody dies.
After how much time?
In a short period of time. Well, in other words, in a day or two, if you were to get 500 rem, half of the people, you basically have a 50-50 chance of dying of radioactivity. This is all on the internet now. You can get all this stuff on the internet. But when I was sitting in the classroom listening to that, I was thinking, how do they know that? I mean, how can they know when, to me, the only radioactivity that people had ever experienced were the Japanese in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it's not like they were all wearing some kind of radioactive detection device, film badges, or later on the Navy went into what's called TLDs, thermoluminescent detectors, to measure the amount of radiation. So how did they know how much these Japanese got near Hiroshima and Nagasaki that were dying of radiation sickness or almost dying from radiation? And that made me wonder, how do they know where these limits came from? How can they tell us? And that answer came from you years and years and years later when I realized, Shimon Peres, in exchange for American nuclear know-how to build a demonal reactor and create a nuclear weapons program, sacrificed some thousand, Yemenite children
that
for our
was the
test
tip
program.
of the iceberg here. There was the
I want to say, I'm just conjecturing that. I don't know that.
No, you're not conjecturing. You're conjecturing right, all right? But wasn't
I don't know. It just makes sense. It just makes sense that that's how, and if that's true, that it's like the Nazi Germany experimental programs on Jews all over again.
There we're going. Now let's expand. You don't know about the ringworm children? All right.
I haven't heard of the
115,000 Sephardic, look, all of them, all of the Sephardic children brought to Israel to this nightmare were taken out of classrooms, their heads were shaved, a little marker was put over their brains, and they were blasted with massive doses of gamma rays right through their brains. 6,000 died within a year. The rest, many suffered the rest of their lives. You didn't know this, huh?
Yeah, I must have. If you wrote about it, I must have seen that in one of your emails or books.
Oh, it's not one. How did I know about the Yemenites? Because Rabbi Uzi Meshulam phoned me up and said, meet me in prison. I went to his prison. He asked me to be the spokesman for the Yemenite children. I agreed, but they were so totally infiltrated by the secret services, by this Schiffers lady, I couldn't get in. And then someone named David Bel-Hassan, he did a film called The Ringworm Children, which is on the internet. And you're right, the labor Zionists who founded Israel viewed the Sephardim as animals. They viewed Jews as animals. You start getting into this, it becomes unreal. And it never, ever gets easy. Never. There's no way to justify. Never. But the ringworm children were brought to Israel to be used as guinea pigs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sick what people can do to people. It's going to be brought to an end someday.
Oh, are you in for a treat? All I can tell you, you're going to find out why they captured Eichmann. He opened his mouth, and they put him in a soundproof box. And it turns out he was working with these labor Zionists to save a few thousand of their friends and wipe out hundreds of thousands who didn't count. It's a nightmare. I hate to bring this up. I wrote it yesterday, and you read it tonight afterwards, all right?
Okay.
All right. We can go beyond Israel. The Israel you know I'm glad to say that I opened up a tiny portion of it. Mm-hmm. The real truth is the people are guiltless. The Israeli people are victims no more, no less than they were in Poland.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I've been in Israel a few times, and I just love the people, and they aren't aware of all this stuff, and they just want to live in peace.
Not a clue. But nonetheless, the folks who run the finances, the media, the folks that run their lives, they began founding an Israel with the Nazis. And it gets worse from there, all right? The good guys, the Irgun, the right, the religious, they were thrown out. They took over. And, well, I won't spoil it. Folks, if it's not up on my website yet, go to Facebook, look up Eric Chamish, you'll see it. It is heartbreaking for me to write stuff like that. Heartbreaking. But I can't lie forever. I can't do it. It's not in me. All right, Kevin, you got me in this mood where the world isn't the way I planned it either. Well, let's...
Can I bring up Kissinger again? So that article I alluded to...
He was a refugee from the Nazis. Family were wiped out in this experiment. He knows who... Leave that...
and he's a Jew hater. I mean, he's a Jewish Jew hater, which is crazy to me, but... The article he wrote is Kissinger, U.S. intelligence community endorse world without Israel. And next week, he's going to be in Europe, along with a bunch of other Bilderberger people, plotting further plans for the accomplishment of the New World Order. And this article, Kissinger, U.S. intelligence community endorse world without Israel, was September 2012, where he says... in 10 years, there'll be no more Israel. And I have some comments to that article by quoting Kissinger on our website that people can search on if they want to.
If you knew the whole story, look, none of it's good, all right? The whole story stinks from all sides once you get a little involved. But again, his family was wiped out, and he's very vengeful. All right. Once again, I plugged my article from yesterday. Let's go on to you seem to be much happier talking about this elite. The Bilderbergers, you say, are meeting next week. By the way, you've got the Bilderbergers, the CFR, and the UN. They're all the world elite?
Well, and the Trilateral Commission, another like-minded
and the Trilateral. That's the world elite?
Well, they are. I mean, and see, some people think, you're a conspiracy guy. I mean, these people really do exist. They have an exclusive club. I think it's Switzerland they're meeting at this time, and there's a 10-mile exclusion area the security is setting up next week for the Bilderbergers. So, I mean, these guys really are powerful. They really are at all levels of education, finance, military, politics.
Do they get along?
And I don't know. No one's allowed to be inside the meetings, and you only get little snippets from people that are insiders that will put out a couple of tidbits every once in a while. But
there's
a
mission between having the exact same agenda and working hand in hand and having deep ideological disagreements. I mean, what are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about a desire, and here's my source of what I'm saying. The European Commission website had, under a tab they used to have in 2010, which I snapshotted and have used in a PowerPoint presentation, EU in the world, where they showed the map of the current 180-some countries all boiled down to 10, where their plan is to consolidate power. That's the whole reason why Obama now will not divulge the actual wording of the specific trade agreement, that nobody, even the congressmen, are not being told what the words
trade
are.
Agreement?
There's in our news, Congress and everybody else is all in an uproar of, not much of an uproar, over the fact that Obama wants power to initiate this trade agreement and the Pacific Trade Agreement without Congress even knowing what it says. People are asking, what does the treaty say?
Between who and who?
The Pacific Asian Rim states, China, Japan, everything else. And there was one article that I read that somebody supposedly knows what it says, and it is the abrogation of national sovereignty of America. And you have the Europe that's formed into one continent.
Who are you abrogating it to? Who gets it?
The people that control the power, money, and militaries will put us, the useless eaters, into compliance for what they want us to do.
Ooh, these are serious claims. And
are you a betting man?
I don't know what to say. I don't have the info.
What I'm saying is, look at what they did to Europe. They unified Europe. They want to unify Africa. That's a fact. They're trying to unify Africa. A friend of mine is a missionary.
That a good thing? What's so bad about that?
If everybody that rose to power was a benevolent dictator, nothing would be wrong. But history tells us that what rises to power in dictatorships, of which a 10-nation global empire will have 10 dictators ruled by one dictator, then the people that rise to the top are just like when you're trying to make precious metals. The scum rises to the top. And history told that, Pol Pot, Hitler, Mao Zedong, Stalin, how many people do we have to rattle off before we know that the idea is great? People that sit in smoke-filled rooms and plot how they can bring about global utopia by just making us stupid people come under their subservient, become their slaves, and they'll make the place a better place. And yet they don't realize that they themselves end up being mass murderers.
They? The people?
No, the
dictators turn dictatorships into mass murdership, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Stalin rose to power because he was going to make Russia a much, much better place. All he had to do was slaughter 20 million Russians to make the others comply. And it never did materialize into the great utopia that he planned and promised. And these guys are going to do the same thing on a bigger scale.
Men to the Second World War. There were things in the way of that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. What if the world was unified on a common goal, and that common goal was the same goal as Hitler had? There would have been nobody to stop what Hitler was doing. And
except Stalin.
And same thing with Stalin. See, what I'm saying is...
Stalin. Stalin stopped from the East.
I know. Yeah, if it would have been the czars, they would have done the same thing. What I'm saying is the only thing that allows the human race to not be 100% enslaved by the lords of the world is the fact that there's so many nations around that they can't really get away with it forever. And if they can consolidate all the nation states and consolidate military power into their own hands exclusively, then everybody is going to be subservient to people like North Korean's dictator. And
North Korea.
North Korea is a modern example. The guy and his family before him, they care nothing about the people. They just enslave them for their own jollies. And the Bible, I hate to bring up that subject, told us
you can bring it
that this would be the condition.
I'm going to say,
I don't really hate
why
to bring it up.
North Korea? If you want to consolidate, who needs North Korea?
I'm just saying right now it's a nation state that's rogue, and the world order is going to make it not rogue someday because Asia's going to be one. It's not going to have a loose cannon.
And to get back to your point, you're saying Obama signs agreement leading.
Are you cutting out?
No, I'm still here. You started with saying Obama's keeping a secret. He signed an agreement with China and Japan, but he won't tell anyone what's in it. You're saying that's what's in it?
No, I'm saying no one knows what's in it because no one's allowed to know. What he wants from Congress is a fast-track authority to negotiate and seal the deal on a Pacific Trade Agreement deal. And so far, Congress hasn't given it to him. But this is news right now. I mean, if they give him the fast track, he has the power and the authority by Congress, the Senate, to just go ahead and sign the deal. Then we're going to be knowing what it says. And one article that I read said that the thing is the death of America.
You're saying you don't trust your own president?
No.
Well, that's shocking. Alrighty. So, in short, North Korea is going to be swallowed, and they don't know it, by this agreement with the Pacific. All right, we'll have to wait and see on this. I still haven't got it completely straight, but it's all going to be united.
Nobody is going to be allowed to be rogue. Nobody's going to be a maverick. There's a big plan, and the plan's going to be implemented. And it just, I mean, what I'm saying, and I don't hate bringing up the Bible. The Bible says the last days, Daniel, Revelation, there's going to be a 10-nation world empire. And I'm saying the European Commission used to have on their website, EU in the world, their plan to cause all these nations to become just 10 nations. And that's what explains why nobody, Republican, Democrat, or anybody else, is solving the border crisis with Mexico and America, because they want it to be one.
Well, we'll go back to what we're getting at. The problem with this approach is you already know the punchline, and you're making the facts fit into your punch. And it's not a fair way to do arguments. Unfortunately, I do look at what is happening. I believe your president has to reveal anything in a treaty signed by your guy. I don't think he can get away with this.
He's gotten away with so many violations to the founding father documents of this country that it's not, he knows he can do anything. These guys own the media. They own the educational system. They own the politics. They own the military. They're in their end game, Barry. And they're about to bring this big war on us. And
hold on. That's another big claim right here. What big war are we talking about?
Well,
you said it. Now you've got to back it up.
I can't right now. It's coming.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin, we're about to take a break. Now, when we come back, you've got to be really sharp here. I want to know what this war is. Look, I have a pretty good clue where my nation, which I do consider Israel, despite everything, is headed for major, major trouble, and I can tell you from where it's coming. And unfortunately, I've discovered it's coming from within in a big way, a huge way from within. But I can give you the answer. Now, when we come back in an hour, we're going to go through this whole world government of yours. But you got to be ready, and you got to tell me. I mean, what's the big deal with open? Oh, gosh. Kevin, you've been good. Now, next hour, I'm gonna force you to explain what a world government we're heading for means. Are you ready for that coming up?
I'll try the best I can, Barry.
Oh, you'll be fine. Look, folks, this has been Kevin Lee, and this, of course, is Barry Chamish. We take 7 minutes off. We've got a lively guest. I'm going to make him lively. I'll see you in 7, everybody.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Former U.S. House Speaker Dennis Hastert has pleaded not guilty to charges in a federal hush money case. An indictment says Hastert agreed to pay $3.5 million to keep someone from revealing past misconduct by Hastert. The judge is now considering conditions for Hastert's pretrial release. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush is calling for the deepening of economic and security ties with Eastern European countries vulnerable to Russian meddling.
Russia must respect the sovereignty of all of its neighbors, and who can doubt that Russia will do what it pleases if aggression goes unanswered?
Bush made his comments in Berlin, a trip that is leading to speculation that Bush will officially enter the race for the GOP presidential nomination. Speaking of the nomination, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie says his family is now on board if he decides to run for president next year. Christie spoke Tuesday at a New Hampshire college. He says he will make up his mind later this month and announce his decision shortly afterwards. Pro-lifers will converge on Selma, Alabama soon to draw attention to a national problem.
The event is set for June 19th and 20th in Selma. Catherine Davis, founder of the Life Restoration Project, explains the date was selected for a special reason beyond that of a traditional celebration.
June 19th is typically celebrated in the African American community as Juneteenth, which was the day that Texas recognized the end of slavery. So they emancipated the slaves there in Texas, and it's now become a national holiday for the African American community.
That will be the focus again this year, but also the Selma demonstration will target the lack of enforcement of standards for abortion clinics and abortionists. Some states have no established standards. Davis stresses that most states inspect restaurants, veterinarian clinics, and outpatient surgical facilities, but abortion clinics seem to get a pass. 50 years ago, marchers were in Selma seeking the right to vote for blacks in what is called Bloody Sunday, with authorities using batons on and firing tear gas at the marchers. Davis contends every day is a Bloody Sunday in abortion clinics nationwide, where 36% of African American pregnancies are terminated with limited or no oversight. I'm Charlie Butts.
The Supreme Court of Virginia has temporarily blocked the planned closure of 114-year-old Sweetbriar College, a private school for women. The decision sends the case back to a lower court where leaders of the college will be questioned over their March announcement to shutter the school by the end of this summer. They cited insurmountable financial challenges and declining enrollment. Well, it's not an insurmountable challenge, but packing for an airline flight is a difficult thing, and an airline trade group is encouraging a new carry-on standard that could force flyers to buy new, smaller bags.
Most U.S. airlines